more than 170 COVID-19 cases have been reported for Nueces County on this Friday. 172 new cases to be exact. That'll bring the total number to 33,808 since March of last year. Sadly, there were 3 COVID-19 related deaths reported. As always, our sincerest condolences to these families and loved ones. Currently, 178 people are in the hospital battling COVID-19, 52 in intensive care. Meantime, local health officials continue to monitor an increase of hospitalizations in the coastal bend due to COVID-19, saying Nueces County remains at code red, meaning there is an extreme risk of catching the virus. During the latest pandemic report released by the Coastal Bend Task Force, Dr. Byrd said the percentage rate of hospital beds with COVID patients is right at 14.3%. And that is an important number to watch, because if it reaches 15% for 7 days in a row, it'll trigger a business rollback to 50% capacity and would also force bars to close.
Now, this rollback has happened in Jim Wells County in January, but it hasn't happened in any of the other counties in the Coastal Bend, at least not yet. And we're right there at the threshold, so we're gonna see what happens here.
Meanwhile, Dr. Byrd says while Nueces County is seeing a downward trend in active cases, other counties like Clayburgh, Aransas, and Refugio are seeing an increase over the last month. Looking statewide now, Laredo experiencing a major spike, with 75% of all patients in the ICU being COVID positive. Dr. Byrd encourages folks here at home to continue to take precautions against this horrible virus.